It is Monday, October 29th, and I get to do update number 11. Few things have changed on the robot, and few things are going to continue to change on the robot, and hopefully I don't go way too fast on this one. Although, we'll see what happens. Okay, first things first. Remember this guy? Yeah, he's just a sign. He's here to say hi.
Wait, me? Wait,
No.
Why?
We have this magical thing here on our drive. So basically what you do, take a screw and you screw all the way through. Then you put, it's not focusing, gross. You put 2 caps nuts on the inside and 1 on the outside. And then it's as if you had braced it on both sides because force is transferred through the screw, bolt, whatever you want to call it, and into that channel. So it's no longer flexy on the outside as much as it was before. We're going to do that on the same thing up in front over here. We can't do it here because there's nylon bearing. That's okay. Nylon screw on the bearing. These are nylon screws, by the way. This is our wiring setup for the drive. So all the drive motors get fed up into 2 sides, so right side, left side, into that plate, which is 8 holes wide. So drive motors, and then these go into the motor controllers. These aren't actually zip tied together, so you can separate them if you wanted to. See, it's just that I didn't really bother. Then you go into these motor controller plates. So these are plates just of motor controllers. That way, in case one of them blows up, we can switch out this plate. It's just 2 screws down here, held on using caps nuts, so we can just take that entire plate off, and it'll be like an easy-ish swap. So on the Cortex itself, we have 3 motors per drive, 3 ports per drive, each drive side, 1, 2, 3, and these 2 over here. There's a Y cable. That Y cable is going to end up going to power expander, which isn't here yet, so this is just for now. Then we've got 2 empty leads that'll go into something else, probably the flywheel. Then ports 1 and 10 running other things. If we end up needing to not use 1 and 10, we'll use full Y cable more of the drive, but hopefully I don't have to end up doing that because that would just be kind of gross. So yeah, those 3 wire ports feed directly onto the motor controller plates, and then that motor controller plate, you'll see this is loose, so then that feeds into this plate. We don't actually have the clip things that hold these cables together yet. I would use those instead of doing this thing, but this keeps it fairly tight and pretty good. If that plate comes off, we only have to do 4 zip ties, and we can have the entire thing rewired. Same thing on the other side. These cables come pre-wired. On the back of these plates, they're slightly different, so we take the cables from there, we tie them down. If we need to do a connection, so for the Y cable here, we just have them zip tied down on both sides. The right side is a little bit more complicated. There's more cables going through because it's closer to the Cortex. So again, all the motor cables get tied down on those points, and then if we have cables that need to meet up, then they just get zip tied down on both sides and then fed back to the motor controller so that we don't have loose cables lying around. That's the wiring part of the robot done. Now let's go to the front of the robot without pulling out any wires that I just painfully put in. Okay, this is the USB cord for the Vexna key. It's very long, but our key obviously does not fit in that space there. So yeah, safety glasses are really important. Yeah, so our flywheel, the towers are, I forget if we did this last time, but the towers are now very close together. They're braced at the front here. That's also so that if we run into someone, it doesn't hit our flywheel. The gearing is super simple. We did this last time, I remember now. 36 tooth, 12 tooth, 36 into 12, 12 into 60, and then just 2 motors on the side, like this. So these 2 motors are actually just, there's nothing motor side, and we don't need a full-length C channel. I just did it because it was faster to put motors on. And then on this side, we've got a section of 3 wide. Could be 2 wide and then pillow bearings, but you know what? This is what we had lying around, and the rest of this 2 section is on this thing. This is a reverse level 4-bar together with a whole bunch of caps nuts, and that's our stop, by the way, if that's not going to destroy everything. This is the cap intake so far. these are actually guides, so that this is where they should be. So when the cap intake's on the ground, it's the right height to intake a cap. That's just rubber banding to keep the cap on, or replaced with friction mat or something. Then you've got this oddly built thing for something. This is definitely going to change. This is not for our team, but we're going to use it anyways. So there's that. Our intake has changed slightly. You'll notice we're still using this sketchy bent angle and then C-channel and then bar thing. It intakes the ball fine. You've got these big rubber band sprocket intake things. Everybody's been doing that so far. Then you've got that fuse onto the plate. You actually need a layer of friction matting over this plate to make it work super nicely, or you need a lot of rubber banding here. Friction matting is probably better. Then you go into 12-tooth sprockets. So this is our like second stage. Super simple. It does actually go through the standoff still, but we changed that a little bit, so now it's just on a aluminum plate back here. The reason why we wanted it to be on an aluminum plate was so we can make that entire shaft as short as possible, because our shaft actually isn't long enough to go all the way there. And also, so that plate added just the right amount of thickness for the shaft to clear in between the two standoffs nicely. And there's also like a small black space, I don't know if you can see it down there. And this is all just nylon stuff. And then we've got this thing, which was put on mainly because we were doing driver practice. This is our motor into 12-tooth sprockets. There's a bearing on this side and a bearing on that side. And because, you know, there's this thing, so if I didn't do bearing here, it would have been bad. But the bearing's not holding much weight. This is just our indexer. We're actually going to make a different mechanism that links our intake and indexer motors so that you can have both of them run off of one. Both separately run off of one, so like a double ratchet, but better. That's a flywheel. Hood is still similar. Standoff. What's this called? Whatever that thing's called. Spacer. Plexi is mounted. We actually had to switch to 1x-bars because the hinge was just a little bit too big. So, not Plexi, sorry, Lexan, excuse me. So yeah, and then this is probably the memeiest thing that I've built in the past 24 hours. So you've got motor here with one screw because I couldn't find a second one. And then you've got this chain, which is kind of tight. I think it's too tight, but whatever. So you've got 12-tooth on the motor. You've got a 12-tooth on that second stage intake. And then you've got a very small 6-tooth down here driving this big thing. So these two, I cut myself. Okay, so these two are driven together, but one is being driven significantly faster than the other if you can not tell. This tensioner is here so that there's enough contact over this sprocket. I don't know if we actually need it. I've put it there because I was a little bit worried. This sprocket definitely has enough contact, and this one does too. And that's that. Did I miss anything? Nope. Awesome. Bye-bye.